thank you, and I think the first thing to say is solidarity to the GMB members of the BMA from us. On Thursday, members of the largest doctors' union, the BMA, took industrial action against cuts to our pensions after a ballot which saw a turnout of over 50% and which voted by a majority in favour of over 80%. The last time doctors took industrial action was in 1975. And despite what the Daily Mail would have you believe, patients were safe on Thursday. We all went to our usual places of work and only postponed work that could be safely put off. In hospitals, this meant that some patients couldn't have planned operations, which must have been inconvenient and frustrating. But I think the blame should be placed firmly at the government's door for that, not with the BMA. In Town Hamlets, where I work, we had a rally at lunchtime opposite Whitechapel Tube Station, on the steps where the old Royal London Hospital would have been. There were nearly 100 doctors, other health professionals, members of the public there. And there was a great atmosphere. We had tubes of support from passing motorists. People understand that we are not fighting just for pensions, but we're fighting against attacks on the NHS and the public sector in general. However, not wanting to miss an opportunity to divide and rule, the mainstream press have taken every opportunity to vilify us. And they say that we are overpaid and greedy people who only care for our wallets. And I acknowledge that we're well paid, and I can understand that people who get a far smaller pension than doctors might ask what we're complaining about. But I'd say to them, when the whole of the public sector is under attack from the coalition government, would you rather the doctors stood with everyone else and fought back, or would you rather we rolled over and gave in? So if doctors accept a higher retirement age and higher contributions to get less out at the end, it makes it harder for other people to fight for their rights. We're far stronger if we take united action. And the fight back against attacks on our pensions is part of the wider fight against austerity. Ordinary people struggle to make ends meet, while those earning over £150,000 a year enjoy tax cuts. And while over the last 3 years, 1,000 people on the Sunday Times rich list have increased their wealth by over £155 billion. Only last week, George Osborne and Mervyn King managed to find another £80 billion to lend to the banks to refloat the economy. If there's £80 billion knocking around, why can't we spend it on council housing? Why can't we spend it on cutting on unemployment and creating the 1 million climate jobs that the TUC are campaigning for? Why can't we give it to the NHS? I took industrial action on Thursday because I know that my most effective weapon when my employer is relentlessly attacking me is to withdraw my labour. We negotiated our pension deal less than 4 years ago. We shouldn't have to be renegotiating again. And we all know that this government don't listen. They spectacularly failed to listen to the overwhelming opposition to the Health and Social Care Act, which has privatised the NHS. And I'm angry about the attack on my pension, but I'm far more angry about the privatisation of the NHS. And I think a lot of doctors voted for industrial action over pensions to send a message against privatisation of the NHS. Cameron Lyden said during the election campaign that there will be no top-down reorganisation of the NHS. He must have known that Lansley was planning his unnecessary and ideologically driven reforms. Blair's government introduced the private sector into the NHS, but Lansley's Act will allow them to let rip. Before we know it, we'll have a service akin to that in the US, where when you turn up at a hospital with an emergency, you won't be asked for your name and your symptoms, you'll be asked whether you've got health insurance. In Lansley's health service, groups of GPs will buy healthcare from healthcare providers such as hospitals for their patients. They're expected to make an unprecedented £20 billion in efficiency savings, which is 20% of the NHS budget over 5 years. They're obliged not to overspend, so they'll have to ration care. Patients are already being told that procedures of so-called low clinical value are not available on the NHS. In some parts of the country, this means that they can't have their cataracts operated on if their vision is deemed bad enough. Knee and hip replacements are reported as being rationed. Enter the insurance companies, provide policies to cover the care no longer available on the NHS. Too bad if you can't afford a policy. This is the grim reality of Lansley's health reforms that flies in the face of a comprehensive health service based on need, free at the point of delivery, which was enshrined in Bevan's NHS Act. Hospitals are increasingly run along the lines of independent private businesses. The cap on the amount that they are allowed to earn from private care has gone up from 3% to 49%. It's not a great leap of imagination to see that if they're failing to balance their books, that they will prioritise private patients and NHS patients will go to the back of the queue. The private sector don't have a good record in providing healthcare, and I'm sure you'll all remember the Southern Cross care home scandal a couple of years ago. While in Camden, the borough we're in now, 4,000 GPs have been left without, 4,000 patients have been left without a GP because the private health company, which was contracted to run the surgery, decided it wasn't profitable and closed it down. In Cornwall, only one out-of-hours doctor was employed by Serco to cover 1,000 square miles. Hinchley Brook Hospital in Cambridgeshire was the first NHS hospital to be taken over by a private healthcare provider. Outrageously, they are all to be taking roughly the first £5 million out of any surplus that they make as profits for their shareholders before they will invest it back in private care. In NHS care, listen to me talking about privatisation too much. So health professionals, including doctors, will stand together with other trade unionists to fight the vicious attacks mounted by the coalition government. We've got to work hard to make a demonstration on the 20th of October very, very large and send a clear message to Eton boys that enough is enough. I would like to see coordinated industrial action even bigger than on November the 30th last year, and I'd like to see the VMA taking part in that. So no, Mr Cameron, I won't agree to pay more for my pension, I won't work longer and get less at the end, and I don't think anyone else should either. I'll stand in solidarity with other workers who are fighting for their rights and for the preservation of vital public services.
Thank you, comrades, brothers and sisters. Right, first of all, because there are some people from the refinery here, it's not Canby Island, it's Corrie. Right, Corrie refinery is being shut down and this government is taking no notice whatsoever. We've been in talks with the government and we've been asking them to put money into Savers refinery and they point blankly refuse. This isn't just about the 850 jobs that's in this refinery. This is about thousands and thousands of people in that community. And we've had enough. We've had enough of the government saying they can't invest in Corrie refinery because it's not in the national interest, because they don't think it's worth their time putting money in. Yet they put billions and billions into the banking system. And on the day they turned around and refused us state aid, they announced more billions of pounds going to the banks. And we've had enough of this. We've had enough of this. They've lied to us. They've lied to us every single step of the way, this government. They told us that they go to the European Commission and find out about state aid, because in the other European refineries, they've had state aid given to them. In France, in Germany, and all that, I can't remember what the other one is, in Austria, but they've had Switzerland, they've had state aid. The government said, the European Commission told them that they couldn't give state aid because it would be illegal. We got an email from the European Commission saying they had no such undertaking, no such inquiry from this British government. So they actually lied to us through their back teeth. Now, while they're turning this into a terminal, which means that our fuel is going to be coming from offshore and it will affect the prices of everything in the near future in the London and Eastern region, what we're going to do is, because the government say there's enough fuel in this country, there's enough supply, there's overcapacity, we're going to stop the fuel supplies. We're going to disrupt. Now, we've got 3 actions planned for Monday, and I know this is very short notice because we've had to deal with this in a very short notice sort of way. And we got a demonstration down at the Vopak terminal in Purfleet, which all the supermarkets in the region come out of. So if any comrades can go down there at 1 o'clock, I'd appreciate that. If there's any national comrades in here, we got one at Grangemouth up in Scotland and one at the Lindsay Oil Refinery. You all know what Lindsay stands for, don't we? So at the end of the day, that's where we start our fight back. We're taking it nationally, because if the government don't listen to us in the way we ask them to, we're going to make them take notice. And if we have to threaten the Olympics, we will do. I'm sure for the comrades that will be up here with you speak today, that you'll hear attack after attack after attack on the working class. Now's the time we have to come together and we've got to take that fight back to this government, because they need to be told that they need to listen to the working class of this country. Thank you.
I want to talk about 2 things. I want to talk about privatisation and I want to talk about pensions, because in the NHS those things are very, very closely connected. Jackie mentioned Hinchinbrook Hospital, the first NHS hospital to be completely run by the private sector. Well, you'll be pleased to know that Hinchinbrook Hospital is forward-looking, friendly, efficient, safe and clean. And we know that because it says so on their website. And if you check the Hinchinbrook Hospital website, there's some other interesting stuff. Because what they're trying to do on the website is flog you private healthcare. And they offer some really good, attractive, fixed price, value for money packages. You can get your cataract surgery done for only £2,191. A hernia repair, a real snip you might say, just over £2,000. Hip replacement, a little bit more expensive. Hip replacement will set you back £9,862. And when you get your private surgery done at Hinchinbrook, you're treated on NHS wards by NHS doctors and nurses, using NHS MRI scanners, NHS X-rays, and so on. Your fixed price package doesn't include any follow-up care. You pay more for that, but it's still excellent value for money because they throw in a complimentary daily newspaper of your choice. Now this begs the question, why on earth would any sane person go to their local NHS hospital and get bog standard surgery and pay 10 grand for the privilege, and all they get in return is a free daily newspaper? Well, the answer is a simple one, and Jackie touched on this. It's because we've got 20 billion cuts going through the NHS like a dose of salt. That 20 billion cut is going to be followed by 20 to 30 billion more cuts lined up for the future. An NHS that's being handed on plates to the private sector to dismember, and 90%, 9 out of 10 NHS organisations now ration and restrict access to routine, evidence-based healthcare, the cataract surgery, the hernia repair, the hip replacements that Hinchinbrook charges for. That's what cut and privatisation already mean for people like us. They mean you pay 10 grand or you live with pain and disability. That's choice in the NHS as the Tories see it. That's what privatisation means for patients. An absolute bloody disgrace. One tiny thing, there's a stall there for a campaign to stop Sainsbury's grabbing hospital pharmacies in central London. There's a terrific campaign run by Unite Health Workers and local community activists. Sign the petition, visit the stall. That's a campaign we need to win. But privatisation for patients means disgraceful care. I want to touch just quickly on what privatisation means for NHS workers, because it ain't that good for us and women. The average pension in the NHS, the slap bang right in the middle pension, is £4,087 a year. That £4,087, that's the gold-plated pension that the Overtonians and the Bullingdon boys think is too much, so they want to take it away from us. They're forcing us already to pay more. The increased pension contributions, put together with the pay freeze, put together with inflation, that's going to be a pay cut of close to a fifth in real terms by April 2014. A pay cut of 19 or 20% in a 2-year period. Absolutely disgraceful. They pretend they want us to work until we're 68. Well, get real. That's not true. Nurses on their Zimmer frames doing the drug rounds, it's not going to happen. Paramedics saying to patients, oh, give us a hand, would you stretch it please? It's not going to happen. We're not going to work until 68. The real agenda is to chop NHS pensions by 5% for every year early that we retire. So health workers going forward, if you retire at age 60, that's 35 or 40% of your pension gone at a stroke. We're looking at poverty now and poverty when we grow old as well. And you want to know why? Well, that little Lib Dem gobshite Danny Alexander, he told Parliament back in December, he said, the new pensions will be substantially more affordable to alternative providers, i.e. privatisation. It's exactly the same agenda as the free daily newspapers nonsense. It's about destroying our NHS in the interests of big business. Privatisation is at our expense when we're patients or health workers. We're losing our NHS, we're losing our futures. The question for health workers in particular is what we're going to do about it. And in Unite, our Health Sector National Committee met 2 weeks ago. We agreed a new strategy. It's a strategy that commits us to a fight back. It commits us to industrial action in the autumn alongside other unions. It broadens out our fight beyond pensions so we can build a fight on jobs, on pay, on defence of the national agreement at the same time. And those things necessarily add up to a fight to defend the NHS. It's a good strategy. It's not all done and dusted. It's a starting point. We've been slow in Unite. We've lost momentum. We've got a massive amount of work to do to make this stuff happen. But we've got a clear framework now that makes it possible, and that's important. We can rebuild the unity and strength of November the 30th. We can go beyond that, and we can win. And I want to finish on this really. The NHS, and this is stating the obvious, but the NHS is about the kind of society that we want to live in. The NHS, by definition, cannot be about profit. All of us in this room, workers, socialists, trade unionists, all of us want to live in a society where we look after sick people simply because we're human beings and therefore we care about one another. That's the NHS that Cameron and Osborne are trying to destroy. That's the NHS we have to save. Health workers cannot do it on our own. We can do it through unity, through solidarity, through our collective strength as workers. We've got the strength, we heard this from Russ, we've got the strength to take on the Tories, to take on the bosses, and to win.
Hello everybody, I will try to speak in English, so maybe you have to read a little faster with me. Sin casa, sin curro, sin pensión, sin miedo. That is one of the slogans raised by the Indignados movement. It means without house, without a job, without pensions, without fear. It describes a whole generation of young people faced with instability at work, with low wages, with bad labor conditions. A generation that now is struggling in Spain against the economic crisis with no fear. This generation is building an electric movement since the 13th of May 2011. The Indignados movement has changed the political scenario in Spain. It has been a turning point. Before May 2011, every struggle against the crisis seemed isolated. But after May 2011, every struggle has been linked to many others. I think this is very, very important. The movement unites all the resistance, and every single demonstration, every single strike is part of a wider movement, the resistance against the crisis. But you know, we have occupied the squares in every city, in every town, in every village. We have massive assemblies where the people organize themselves to discuss the way to push forward the movement. And in doing so, many people experience that the real democracy comes from below. Democracy is not about a vote in the elections every 4 years, as the politicians used to say. Democracy is to discuss and to decide collectively every day. At the first demonstration of the May movement, we used to say that we are not put in the hands of politicians and bankers. So the people now have discussed and have decided to defend the public services threatened by the Dutch and to fight austerity politics. Austerity was first introduced by the PSOE government, by José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero, who put wages, who raised the pension age to 67 years, and who reformed the Constitution in order to limit the budget deficit. The general strike in September 2010 against the pension reforms was the very first step in our movement. Last year, in November, the Social Democrats lose the general election when nearly 4 million working class voters stopped backing the Social Democrats. Since then, the new right-wing government of Mariano Rajoy has intensified austerity politics. He promised to cut the deficit by 3.4% in a year, which means historic levels of cuts. For instance, the education budget has been reduced by 22% in a year, and at the same time, the tuition fees for the students have been increased by 66%. The Partido Popular, the right-wing government, has promised a new reform every Friday. Education for us is a big battle that we must win. The University of Seville, teachers and students are ready to not let the course begin next September. Also in Valencia, teachers from the primary and secondary education levels are planning to set 6 days of strike. In the Spanish state, there are more than 200 evictions every day, but the banks are being rescued with public money to continue this barbarie. Bankia received 23 billion euros last month, and the bailout of the bank system will increase the debt up to 100 billion euros. So even by their logic, the debt crisis is getting worse rather than better. It is clear at this stage for us that the ruling class strategy is to privatize the benefits and to socialize the debt. So we have to be very clear. We are not going to pay the capitalist debt. And here is another battle we must win. The Indignados movement shows the growing anger among the Spanish population. There are 5 million workers unemployed, 1 million families have all their members unemployed, and young people and women are the main victims of this crisis. So we have a big issue now. How can we defeat these austerity policies? In my opinion, the movement has radicalized large numbers of people in Spain. It has turned apathy into action, but it is not enough. We need real victories to move forwards. The spiral of cuts announced by the government and the local administrations has spread the resistance to many sectors. Workers are forced to fight the austerity policies at the workplaces. Also, the Indignados movement has been a key factor of revitalizing the workers' struggles in Spain. Last September, teachers in Madrid organized 10 strike days against the cuts in education inspired by the movement. They organized a strike through massive broad assemblies. Students and parents supported also the struggle with sit-ins and occupations of the colleges. The students in Valencia also organized large demonstrations, and they occupied many of the public colleges around the city. In Barcelona, there were 2 powerful strikes, student strikes, and there are some alliances between the students and many teachers to stop the cuts in the university. Also, there are big battles too in the health service. Doctors and nurses are fighting to defend the public health service. Rank and file trade unionists and the Indignados movement are together and united to defend hospitals and health centers. In several days of actions, they have blockaded the roads and have occupied the health service office in Catalonia. Now, the instability and the austerity are producing a political turmoil in Spain. Within 100 days of being in office, the government faced a powerful general strike against the labor reforms. The Indignados movement was very present in the picket lines announcing the demonstration. I think it's very important that young people, for the first time, joined the picket lines. And it's our duty to connect the militancy of the Indignados movement with the rank and file activists in the unions. I think we need each other. So now we are trying to put pressure on the big unions to call for another general strike. Also, I have to say that students and trade unionists are facing higher levels of state repression There are several comrades detained by police after every demonstration, after every strike. Some of them are put in temporary prison maybe for 3 weeks or for a month. So we need all the solidarity. Just to finish, I have to say that we think that we can defeat austerity if we unite all the resistance. Segundo, the miners' strike, the miners' worker spoke before. I have to say that the miners' strike for us show how the workers can get organized to defend their rights and how an industrial action can become a general strike. Victory for the miners today will be a victory for all the movement tomorrow. So hope they are winning. They have all of us.
Hello friends and comrades. I'm working at the public sector in Greece, and I was very happy when coming yesterday in London. I wasn't able to take a bus because there was a bus strike. It reminded me of last year's big strikes in all the public transport, except from it wasn't only for the public transport. There have been 2 days during last summer where also the taxi drivers were on strike, so all Athens was paralyzed from this strike. This shows how much power we have when we decide to struggle and fight the attacks. The ruling class in Greece is happy for another reason. They're happy because they have a new government now, after 2 elections and after the fall of the 2 governments. Last Sunday, finally, the Nea Demokratia, the Tory party, let's say, won the elections, and the ruling class in Greece is very relieved because the new government is not a left government, but this is a coalition of the Tory party and the PASOK, which is the Labour Party, with a little help of the reformistic left party of democratic left. The truth is that this coalition is a coalition of losers and liars. The party who seemed to won the elections actually didn't even get to take not even 30% of the votes, and even though 2 other parties on the right really disappeared from the map, and PASOK, the Labour Party, took the 13% of the votes. And I have to remind you that in 2009, when we also had the elections, the PASOK party gained 44% of the votes, and now it dropped to 13%. That's why also the Democratic left doesn't want to participate. They didn't give any of their politicians to take. They didn't want to take any ministry because they want to say that we're not participating in this government. We just support it because Greece has to have a new government. And this government has really great difficulty to agree how to proceed on the assault because they know that their position is very weak to face the massive movement of resistance who led the 2 former governments to resign. And the reason for that is that the big winner of the elections is actually the left. Even though Syriza didn't get to be the first party, its percentage is historically high, the highest percentage ever got a left party, not only Greece, I believe, but in other countries too. And in the working class neighbors, if we add the percentages that all the left parties and the anti-capitalist party from Russia, if we add all those percentages, we can see that the vote of the whole left is near 50%. These are the areas who who gave all the struggles. These are the heirs of factories like the steel factory of Haliburgia, where the workers have occupied the factory and now strike for about 8 months. And that's why they on the left get the highest score. This didn't get from nowhere. You know all that people actually voted for the cancellation of the debt and against the memorandum. Nobody wants in Greece the memorandum. We just not want just renegotiation of the memorandum. We want the cancellation. We say we won't pay the debt. And this came as a result of a big movement of radicalization of a big part of the working class and the students who took part in the biggest wave of strikes, rank-and-file strikes, occupation of working places, the movement of occupying the squares, the universities. We've ever had during the last 50 years in Greece. In the last 2 years, we have had 17 general strikes, an uncountable number of rank-and-file strikes, coordinated strike action between different places of the private and public sector. Until now, the workers of, as I told you, the workers of the steel factory in Haliburgia are continuing their struggle. And yesterday, the owner took them to the last week. The owner took them to the court, which of course decided that the strike was illegal. And yesterday morning, police and scabs attacked the strikers in the front of the factory and hurting some of them and sent them to the hospital. What kept these people so long in the occupation was the solidarity of other workers who collected money and food for them, and also pushed the unions of the area to organize a strike in the whole area of all the working places, I mean the local hospital, the schools, the factories of the area, to show their solidarity in struggle. The new government, of course, has every reason to be afraid of this movement. That's why they held an hysteric campaign against the left. Now they say that we are very happy because all the bad things have gone now. Now we need to continue saving the bankers and assaulting the workers because we have to save euro. This is prosperity for Greece, for the working class and people and the poor. We have to save the euro. The euro is the same thing like the Titanic is now in the sea, and they try to save it, and they want us to pay for the rescue. The movement in Greece is so strong that people felt so self-confident, not only to occupy working places, ministries, universities, but also try to take control of what is going on in these places. Last October, there has been a wave of occupations in the biggest ministries in the center of Athens and elsewhere. My colleagues working in the National Institution of Statistics occupied the building and refused to give to the Troikans who had come in Athens the statistic facts that they wanted to use to prove that the level of debt in Greece is very high. The Assembly of the Workers in a hospital in Kilkis decided that the hospital is under workers' control and that all patients can have all the exams, the medication, the treatment they needed without paying any money. The students at the University of Athens offered a building of the university in emigrants who were under hunger strike to stay in and protected them from the attacks, from the police attacks. We have a very big, our movement has also a very big anti-racist and anti-Nazi experience, and that's why the new government need the fascists as an alternative solution and try to target the left as being responsible for all the violence in our society. I think that there are two fights we have to continue after the result of the elections. First is the anti-Nazi fight to throw out the Nazis out of the parliament and out of the government, out of the parliament, out of the neighbors, out of the working places. And the second thing is to continue the fight, not only to paralyze economy, strikes, general strikes, coordinated action, but also to go one step forward to say that we have to control the working places, and because this is the only way to stop the catastrophe that capitalist crisis brought to our lives. People really discussed that in the working places, and we have the exams I already told you that people move towards to workers' control. I think we have to make it happen in every place. That's the only way that not only to throw out Samaras and his new government, but also to work all together to fight against capitalism and to create a new society where there's no poverty, there's no racism, there's no crisis, and we can take and we have to take control now of our lives so that we can have control of what is happening in the future.
Hi, I'm Lawrence Lee, and I'm coming from Quebec to actually tell you what's happening right now, because there's like a massive protest in Quebec about the raise of the tuition fees that the government was actually trying to raise the tuition fees by $1,625 in 5 years. Well, I'm going to tell you how it actually starts. First of all, it only happens in 2010, during winter 2010, when the government wants to actually have plans to raise the tuition fees. And then what happened after that, when the plan was made, is that 40,000 students on strike to protest against that. After that, in winter 2011, then the government he confirmed that he's going to raise the tuition fees, and he actually told us the numbers. Right after that, there were 200,000 students on strike. It's approximately half the students in Quebec that are on strike that is not going to school. And during the spring 2011, approximately 40,000 people walk in the street during winter, in the cold, to protest against the tuition fees. And after that, well, a lot of things happened. I mean, we sent letters, we signed petitions, but nothing actually happened. And after 2 years, during the winter of 2012, we actually decided to go on an open-ended general strike. What is an open-ended general strike? Is that all the students, until they accept the offer that the government gave us, they will still keep going on strike, and they will not go to school. So why are we doing this? Well, first of all, the raise of tuition fees, why we protest against that, it's for several reasons. For example, many surveys told us that students, that the raise of tuition fees will, a lot of students won't be able to go to school because of the money they have to work for it, and have to actually pay their schools, and a lot of students won't be able to do that. And the second thing that we are actually protesting, that we protest a lot about that, is that the idea that students have to pay for their school. I mean, it's like, what we think is that it's like students have to invest in their own knowledge. That knowledge is more about an idea of capitalism, that what you do is that you invest in your knowledge instead of just going to school, because knowledge has to be accessible to everyone. We shouldn't stop to go to school because we have to pay for it. And many surveys also told us that when students have to work part-time for part-time job or work during the summer, well, actually, they will study less in school, and what they're going to learn will be, well, they will learn less than what they should learn at school. So that's why we fight against the rate of deficiencies for all those reasons. Then, well, I'm going to tell you other numbers about what's going on right now during the winter 2012 and during the spring 2012. The 22nd of March, we were 200,000 people walking together pacifically in the streets to protest against deficiencies, which is actually the highest numbers in Quebec for it's been, the highest number in history of Quebec for student protests. Well, actually for all protests in Quebec. And well, yes, there were 200,000 people on who has been walking, but the actual numbers of students on strike, which means students that doesn't go to school, climbed up to 310,000 people that were not actually go to school, which means it's more than 80% of all the students in Quebec that doesn't go to school that day. And that's the number, still the highest number, the highest peak what we reach for, and still, after the 22nd of March, the government doesn't back up. He doesn't want to negotiate, he doesn't want to talk about us, he even intimidate us to go back to school, that we're just students who have iPhones and laptops and just doesn't do anything in life. But we still keep going on. We receive a lot of people who support us. That includes a lot of teachers, that includes intellectuals, that includes artists, actors, that includes adults, and it includes also some political parties on the left wing that support us. Even as seen on the protest, a lot of old people who were supporting us, because we're actually saying that there's like a clash of generations, that the young try to change things, and that the old people are just say that we're doing things that is gonna happen, that we're doing things that things is not gonna change, and we're saying that the baby boomers, like the old people, it's not gonna are they just saying that what we do is ridiculous. But the thing is that I saw people when I walk in the street like this, 22nd of March, there was a lot of old people walking with us and support us. Then, on the 22nd of April, it's the day of Earth. That day, after a month, when nothing still happened, we were 300,000 people walking in the street that day to protest once again, not only for the student protest, but for a lot of many things, like for education, for the way we think in society, for the way we do things. But still after that, nothing really happens. After actually 2 months, the government decided to have a negotiation with us. It was kind of a tricky negotiation because the student leaders were actually talking with the government during 32 straight hours without any breaks. So it was like it's hard to keep going, psychology going to negotiate when you actually have no breaks and you are on a 22 hours straight of negotiating. So it was not a real negotiation, it was a tricky negotiation. But still, one of the students did sign the papers. But as I said earlier, until the student doesn't accept the negotiation, we still keep going on strike. Well, and then nothing happens, and the May 18th, a law has been, the government puts a law to actually stop the protest and stop the general strike. It's called the Bill 78. The Bill 78, it's a bill where actually it says that you still can protest, but it gives so many restrictions that actually the protest, we can actually protest. What happened after the Bill 78, the Law 78 has passed, the night it has passed, 10,000 students walking in the streets to press participants the bill. And then, the 22nd of May, we were approximately 400,000 people walking the streets. Well, that's all I have to say about the protest. And we're still fighting. It's been 4 months, we're still fighting, we're still doing it. And we receive a lot of support from many countries and from a lot of people. And that's one thing I want to thank, but we'll still keep going on. We're not going to stop. And we'll still keep doing it, even if we're going to lose our semester or lose our money or stuff like that.